Complete Paperless Solutions, giving you cutting-edge technologies with real-world experience and know-how. We'll take your organization to the next level of information management. Complete Paperless Solutions, the only solution.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Laserfiche 101 for Beginners and Power Users. I'm Kimberly, and today I will be your moderator. Just a little housekeeping before I introduce our speaker. If you have any questions during and after the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. I can see that some of you are already taking advantage of that, so please continue. I'll be monitoring the questions during the presentation, and we'll also take some at the end and follow up after, so please use the box. Also, the presentation looks best in full screen mode, so you'll want to enable that by clicking the full screen option. But I will warn you, there will be moments during the webinar where Greg will want to see the bottom of the screen. So if you're in full screen view, depending on your resolution, you may need to have to roll your sidebar. Finally, I wanted to share that this webinar is the first of a series of training webinars with the goal to make you more efficient when using Laserfiche. So stay tuned for the rest of those. And yes, we'll be recording this one and making it available to you. Our presenter today is Greg Hine, Senior Vice President of Complete Paperless Solutions. Many of you have already worked with Greg and know he has decades of experience in envisioning and implementing and training on Laserfiche solutions, with an emphasis on enterprise integrated and customized utilization. You'll also know that Greg and the rest of the CPS team work really well with government agencies, helping them balance service excellence with efficient operations. Greg, when you're ready, please begin.
All right, thank you, Kimberly. And good morning, Laserfiche family. I'm going to jump right into this thing. In going through 101, options for what we wanted to show today, came to the realization real quick that this is going to be more than one series. So I know that we've got beginner users and we've got power users, and I know that you're going to be like, wow, why didn't he show that? We are going to make a series out of this, and hopefully we'll be able to outdo the Rocky movies or something along those lines is our intent. With that, I'm going to jump right in. Today, my thread for running through this presentation was I just wanted to keep it practical. Day-to-day use with Laserfiche. We're going to discuss three different views in the Laserfiche client. And we're going to be working with the thick client today. Our future webinars, the next one, we're taking a look at the thin client, which is web access, but not today. So we're going to keep things very practical and very straightforward for you power users. We're also going to throw some nice tips and tricks in there too. And I'm going to start with just simply talking about Laserfiche and Windows integration and Windows authentication. And with that, what that means is that Laserfiche is Windows integrated, meaning from any Windows compliant application, you'll see that there's a send to or a save to Laserfiche from the email that we have here. Let me pull something up on the screen. You'll notice that there's a send to Laserfiche. Now with the email, we're able to save a lot more than just the email, but we can actually sort the attachments and capture information from the email. That's going to be coming up in our next webinar. Today, let's focus on just one quick topic with the send to Laserfiche. When we send something to Laserfiche or save it to Laserfiche, I'm going to go ahead and do this. It saves it as its original document format. Now, here you'll notice that it's actually opening up my repository, GRMS, which is Greg's Records Management System. And it's allowing me to peruse through my folders and store things in Laserfiche directly, okay? I believe that I had a folder I created here. Let me find it real quick. Snapshot and send to. So I wanted to keep these separate. So I want you to think about this. This is a Word document. I'm going to go ahead and assign it a template, City Records, and we'll just leave it like that for now. This is a Word document. In computer language, it's what we call a vector image. It has XY coordinates. It's something that is editable, right? We can highlight things and we can change the text. Versus, Laserfiche has another key feature. It is called Snapshot, okay? I know a lot of you are familiar with this, but this is basically a printer driver. Instead of printing to paper, we're going to go ahead and print into Laserfiche. Now, this document is like as if you walked up to the copier machine or if you had the scanner and you scanned it in. It's what they call a rastered image. So we've got vector images, which are editable, like a Word document or PDFs, and then we have rastered image, which are pictures, pictures made up of a bunch of pixels, right? And they're not editable. Okay. Now, so we just sent a couple of things in there. And what I want to do right now is I'm going to show you my first tip and trick. I know a lot of you, deal with customer traffic, whether it be on the phone, especially nowadays, versus counter traffic. But have you ever, had just a whole bunch of things open on your desktop and, you need to get to Laserfiche really quick? Well, let me show you my first tip and trick before we jump into the client. I'm going to open up the properties for the shortcut to the Laserfiche Thick client, okay? It came up on the other screen. So let me pull this up here. I want to point out that I put a couple of triggers at the end of the icon that open Laserfiche, so that when I open this, and you'll notice right here where it has the shortcut key, it's got Control-Alt-L. And if I hit Control-Alt-L, watch what happens. It opened up Laserfiche. It logged me in automatically, and it took me straight to my quality assurance folder. Now, we're going to be making this available, the switches that I used in order to do this. And I'm going to show it to you real quick because we are recording this. But in my target line, I put in a -W, which says log in using Windows authentication. That's another part of the Windows integration. It allows us to pass our username and password from logging into Windows straight through to Laserfiche, and it lets us into the areas that we're supposed to be in. Okay? The -L is for the Laserfiche repository, all right? And it's saying which repository do you want to log into automatically? GRMS, Greg's Records Management System. And this last one is for entry ID. It's a -E. And it says 11221, right? So it's the entry ID for the folder that I wanted it to go into. See over here in Laserfiche, see how I have this entry ID column turned on? Let me go back one, and you'll notice that from copy machine, is set to 11221. So I'm able to just hit a quick key and have Laserfiche open exactly where I want it to go. So I think that that's a cool little trick, and I just thought that I would share that with everybody to get the ball rolling here. Now, as I said earlier, we're going to be talking about 3 different views for the Laserfiche presentation this morning. We're going to be looking at the browser view, which is what we're in right now, and we're going to look at the document view, and then we're going to take a look at the search view. Now, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about why Laserfiche is a lot easier for people to use than a lot of their applications, because it's a nested folder structure. It's a lot like Windows Explorer or My Computer, where you can view the large icons, the small icons, lists, and what have you, just by simply changing the button. And you see that this is the exact same way in Windows Explorer. I'm going to stay in the details view today because I want to point out a couple of key features here that we have, okay? Now, let's talk about the views themselves. Now, if we go to Tools, Options, you'll notice that for each one of these views that we have, I'm able to apply these columns or this view to all folders or to remember for each individual folder. So when I say it's apply to all folder and I set this up once, the same columns come up, the same view comes up for everything. And of course, remembering for each individual folder is as I save it for each individual folder, it will retain that. While I'm here, I want to show you this real quick. This is the ability to change the font that we're seeing. I know that sometimes with these presentations, they're harder to see because of the resolution. So we can actually go in and change the font and the size in Laserfiche right here, so that's easier for us to see, right? One of the other key things that I want to point out while we were in tools and options as well, I want to point this one out, and I know some of these things are basic for some of you, but some of you are like, wow, thanks for showing me that. Prompts. How many of you have gone in and checked the don't remind me again button, and you're like, oh shoot, it's saving every time now, everything I do, and I don't want to do that. You can come in here to tools, options, and prompts, and you can reset the dialogues that aren't coming up. And if they're not listed here, you can hit the reset button and reset all of the prompts back to your normal view. I'm going to go back and change my font back to the size that I had before. Tools, options, browser, general is where this is, and say OK. Now, the last thing I'd like to say about these columns of information that we're displaying, let me open up this again, is that we can reorder these columns. We can move them around and put them in whatever order we want by simply dragging and dropping them. And we can also sort ascending and descending by clicking on them. And the last thing to point out was the ability to be able to set it up and actually save the column setup, so that if you are in a specific folder and you chose, to apply to all folders except for one, and you wanted to save a contract type setup, or you wanted to change and save it to purchasing or something like that, you can save your setup and then reload them later on. Okay? Now, I want to jump into just a couple of quick things here, and we're going to get into some practical use. So here's another simple tip and trick, and I know that a lot of you have done this, where you got on the search screen and couldn't figure out how to get back to the browser view. And I want to make sure that you point out these two buttons to go back from the folders to the search. Okay? I know that seems silly, but I think all of us have done that at one time or another, and I know I have. It was when this new client came out years ago, I did it, and I was like, wow. So I wanted to point that out. Moving along here, I want to point out the quick search. And this is a really a nice feature to have, and let me show you a couple examples why. So let me get back into my folder here, where I can simply click on a particular document, right, and it shows me in a brief view what's in there without having to open and close and open and close. And we're going to talk about this a little bit further down. One of the other things that we can do too is turn on, say, like the thumbnails, right? So I can actually peruse through this document in the quick view by turning the thumbnails on and navigating through. The other thing that I can do from here too, from the thumbnails, is I could select the thumbnail. I'm going to hold my control key down because I want page 2, page 5, and whatever that page is, page 9. And I can right click on that from there and say email these pages. So that's one of the cool things that I can do from the quick view. And I want to send it out as a PDF or a TIFF, because those are what we call multi-page formats. TIFF, group 4, it's black and white, then they have JPEG. But what it does is, if you have a 20-page document, if you send it out, it'll be one document with 20 pages. Same thing with a PDF. But say, for example, if we were to send it as a BMP or a JPEG or a PNG, then you'd have an email with 20 attachments instead. So PDF and TIFF are the multi-page formats. I'm not going to send this out just now just to save some time. But while we're talking about the quick view, let me go to another document here. Here's another use for the quick view. Now, instead of using the thumbnails for this one, I'm going to turn the thumbnails off. And I'd like you to note these buttons. You can see that when they're on, the toggle, that they're outlined, and it's just like pushing a switch, right? I'm going to turn on the annotations. Because here's one thing, and I think that this is one of those features that don't get used enough, is collaboration by using the annotation features in Laserfiche. And this is a quick view of, hey, it shows me, on what page certain annotations are. And one of the things that we like to do is, this here says blue belongs to the boss, and, different colors as they're highlighted and put on there could belong to certain individuals. So it's a really cool visual representation of, being able to collaborate over particular documents using annotations. And these annotations can be private or public or however you want. But what's nice about them is, again, you can click on them and navigate through the quick view from the annotations pane. So that's like I said, I believe that's a very underused feature. Now, let me turn that off, and let's talk about the navigation buttons. These navigation buttons, of course, allow us to go back and forth through the history of where we are. But I want to point out the side buttons, too, that show you exactly where you are and where you've been and, where you can go in your history. So these buttons are really important for navigation, especially if you've been working out all day and you're like, oh, I was there earlier this morning and I forgot where it was. Well, hit the side button and try to remind yourself. Okay? Now, we're not going to go through every one of these buttons, trust me, but we are going to go up to a certain point here. We've got, Control X, which is cut, right? Removing it from a specific directory and moving it somewhere else. Control C to copy. Control V to paste. Control P to print, right? Control Z, you guys. Here's an important one. Control Z. Oh, shoot, I didn't mean to do that. Undo it. Control Z, right? Undo. So I want you to pay attention to the quick keys that come with this, because when it comes to, getting the day-to-day job done, the faster you can do it, the more efficient you can do it, the faster you get it done, and of course you have free time to do all the rest of the jobs that you have to do. So we're just speeding you up to do more work, I guess. But here's one. So we've got this scan button here. Now, it doesn't have a quick key, but let me show you a quick tip and trick. If we right-click on that icon and I go to Customize, right? Over here, there's a tab called Keyboard, and it will allow me, let me find the scan. There it is. It will allow me to create my own quick key. So let me think. Scan. I'm going to do Control, Shift, and S, and assign that to the scan button. Okay? So now when I want to pull up the scan window, I can hit Control, Shift, and S, just like we did to open Laserfiche when we were on the phone with the Joe Public. So quick keys and buttons, and they'll help you navigate through. And we're going to talk a little bit, more about those things as we get through this. Now, let's get to some practical use in our quality assurance folder. Now, there's a few things that we can do in multiple multiple documents in a specific folder. What I want to do right now is just point out a couple of things. So if I go in and say select, let me sort these by name. If I go in and select these samples, 1 through 9, and I'm holding my shift key down, selecting the first document, holding my shift key, and then selecting the last one. If I wanted to do a multiple selection, I could use a combination of my control key, where I can select a single document, and then my shift key, and then my control key, and my shift key again. So shift and control as we do multiple selections, okay? I'm going to select all of these, and I'm going to click on this button up here. It looks like an equal sign. It says View Metadata when I put my mouse pointer over it. And you'll notice that they all have the same color, which was blue, so that told me right there that they had the same template, because my documents are showing different colors by the template that's assigned to them. So you guessed it, City Records is blue. And you'll notice it gives me the ability to set information. So I'm going to set this to the department, I'm going to just say the municipal clerk, and I'm going to say OK. So now you'll notice that if I even go to, like, say, sample number 7 here and look at the metadata for it, you notice that it has administration and municipal clerk. They all do. I did a multiple selection. But watch this. I'm going to change this one to have a record series, and we'll just call it a public records request. And you notice that it automatically filled in my retention information. This is using a thing called dynamic fields, okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but dynamic fields allows us to put up certain definitions based on the topmost selection. So in this case, it's development. Now my divisions will only show up for development. And then my record series will only be pertinent to development municipal facility, okay? And then once I select it, it's automatically filling everything else in. Now, I'm going to save that one sample 7, and let me do that multiple selection with all of them again, and I'm going to hit this email, or template button again. Now, you'll notice with this particular, now we have multiple values assigned. So now I know that for department, division, and record series, they all don't share the same value. So if I change any one of these, I'll be resetting that document number 7 back to what it was earlier. By changing this, it's going to change everybody to administration community services. So sometimes that's desirable, but most times not. If you see that it comes up with green in other fields, keep in mind that if you change that field, it will change it for that individual document. However, if you change any other fields and don't change that, it will remain that way. So you don't have to worry about that, okay? So that's a quick little thing about doing multiple selections. Now, one of the other things that's really important is when we search for documents, if we want to do full text searching, they have to be what we call OCR'd and indexed, okay? Optical character recognition, right? And I'm going to show you later when we get to searching how to surface documents that aren't OCR'd and indexed. But for this particular portion of our presentation, I want to show you that doing a multiple selection of these and then clicking on the O button up there will allow me to OCR and index multiple documents at one time. And we can go into options for this. I'm just going to point out a couple of quick things, is that, you can change the priority for the OCR engine. Do you want it to get done fast? Do you want it to get done accurately? Or do you want it somewhere in between? If you're using workflows and things like that where you have to have accuracy because you're trying to capture an invoice number or something off the page, we want it to be as accurate as possible. But if we want to get it done quick, we've got fuzzy search in searching, and usually the text file is for that, for searching for documents, full text. We go with balance because it's faster. Some of the other things that you might consider too is decolumnizing and columnizing text. It'll change the results or the accuracy of your text that we extract. And decolumnizing text is simply that. If you have like a newspaper article type thing and it's got 3 columns, if you decolumnize it, it stacks all 3 columns on one instead of putting them side by side in a really disfigured text file. And a lot of you know what I'm talking about. So we could go ahead and say, okay, and now we could actually OCR and index all those documents at once. Now these documents are rastered. We talked about this at the beginning. These have been scanned, right? It's not a Word document. It's not a PDF, not anything like that. So we can run optical character recognition on it and view the text that's in it. So as soon as I hit this button, you'll notice in our text window, once it does page 1 and page 2, that we will have what we call basic ASCII text in the window, okay? And there are a couple of different uses for this text. Like I said, with the workflow, accuracy is important. In this particular case, you notice that it did a pretty good job. The cleaner the text, the better the scan, the better this will come back. Well, we get into pictures, and you notice we have garbage and these things. So anyway, the OCR text we're going to talk a little bit more about as we get further into our presentation. I want to stay on focus, and let's talk about one more thing that we can do with a multiple selection. So here we have, and I'm just going to go ahead and open one of these documents. I've got this as a basic setup. So we've got, 11 pages in this document, right? And these have all been broken out. You've noticed that this one's 8 pages, and there's 8 pages. Now, let's pretend that these came in as a batch. Now, what I can do is, if we take a look at this first one here, it's got 44 pages, right? And you'll notice that all of them have been combined, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 11, up to 11, up to 11, and so on. I can actually take these documents and combine them into that 144-pager by simply selecting them, again, holding my Shift key down, selecting the last one, and dragging and dropping these over this top document. Now, you notice it's popping up and saying, hey, where do you want to insert these pages? Before the first page of this document, before the last page, or maybe I might want to insert it at a specific page. I'm going to go ahead and choose after. Now, it's going to take and move all of these documents into one document. And now you notice it says all pages have been removed from the 15 documents. They're empty shells. Should we just remove them? Yeah, go ahead. So now, using a multiple selection, I was able to take all of those pages and combine them into one document by simply dragging and dropping them. Now, that's one form of drag and drop. Let's talk about another one. Let me see what I got over here. I've got Windows Explorer. Okay, and what do I got here? I've got tips and tricks. I'm going to drag and drop this in to my folder. Now, this is a PDF. Okay, let me bring that in. It's asking me for field definitions, this, that, and the other thing. I'm just going to leave it by default and let the system bring it in. Now, this PDF is what we would call a vector image, right, as the PDF. But I'm going to convert this to a permanent vital record, or a rastered image, a bitmap, on the fly. So you notice that when I drag and drop this into Laserfiche, it's not a PDF anymore, right? It's been converted to a Laserfiche document. And how we did that, and this is up to you if you want to keep the PDFs. I know a lot of the times with the agenda packets that we keep the PDFs because of the bookmarks. But one of the things I want to point out is PDFs are hogs when it comes to the network. So if you have a PDF that you store in Laserfiche, and say it's a 500-page, even just like that one we did that was 156 pages, well, when you open that, you have to wait for all 156 pages to come over before you can see page one. Versus if you store it as a Laserfiche document, I can see page one instantly because Laserfiche stores in a single page format and only sends the requested page. So I converted this on the fly from a PDF to a Laserfiche document. And I'm going to go to Tools, Options, and show you how we did that. So over here under New Documents, I believe it's under Settings, right? I've got this thing in the middle that says, when importing PDFs, generate the Laserfiche pages. I unchecked keep the original PDF, but if it had annotations, go ahead and bring those over as Laserfiche annotations, right? So that when I drop it in, it immediately strips the PDF wrapper off of it so people that don't have Adobe can actually view it, okay? Now, that's a second form of drag and drop. I'm going to show you one last form. And this one involves workflow for you power users. Let me pull this back up again. I've got this Tom Zencina folder here. And let me put this over to drag and drop because one of my rules is it has to go into a drag and drop folder. And so Tom's folder has his name. It has, looks like his ID or Social Security, I don't know which. Write it down just in case because he's got lots of money. Anyway, so you'll notice inside of there, we've got bulk scans, correspondence, legal tax. So there's subfolders. And inside of these subfolders, there's documents, right? Bulk scans. Well, that's metadata. Correspondence. So that tells me everything in here is correspondence, right? So what we did was we took and created a workflow, a smart workflow that can not only handle the drag and drop, but watch what happens when we drag it in. So normally, without any workflow, if you drag in this folder, it's going to bring all the subfolders and all the documents in just from dragging and dropping, right? And it will build everything in Laserfiche just as you saw it in my computer, right? Or Windows Explorer, whatever you call it. So let's let this run its course through real quick because there's quite a bit of data in there. I mean, you'll notice that it's bringing in quite a few documents with multiple pages, and you'll notice that there's some PDFs there. If you look at some of the names going by, IRAs and 2015 tax return and Brinker Capital and all that other kind of stuff, well, that's metadata. Well, there's Tom's folder. Oh, where did it go? Workflow picked it up already and processed it. So not only did we do the drag and drop, but we also parsed out the folder information and used the metadata in filing. So you notice in bulk scans, I was able to put the date and rename these documents, and not just that, but you'll notice that I was able to capture that date and any other information that I could get from stripping the folder names and the document names and adding it to the metadata automatically. And then you'll also notice that my dynamic fields kicked in and put my retention in automatically. So that's a higher level of drag and drop that you can do. And if you are familiar with workflow, we'd be more than happy to help you guys out, or get with your Laserfiche reseller and have them help you out with writing these types of automation tools. Okay. Now, let's take a look at this real quick. I want to show you a couple of things. Now, at the start of my presentation, we sent 2 documents in from Microsoft Word, right? It was the same document. It was this General Services Agreement, right, from Microsoft Word. And we sent it via snapshot, as well as sending it from the Windows integration. Now, let's take a look at the snapshot one first. This one has taken and converted that to that rastered image, or that bitmap, that thing that's not editable. So it brought it in as a permanent vital record, right? We can't change it anymore. Versus the Word document that we brought in, which was that service agreement. Now, let's get into this a little bit, and let's talk about some of the things we can do in collaborate. We already talked about using annotations, with regular documents, but with documents that are these vector images, we can actually do version tracking with them. We can check them in and we can check them out. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check this document out, and it's going to make me put some comments in. I'm not going to do that right now. And then when I open it, I've got Word open here already. Hang on. And it's not going to let me edit it because it's a read-only, because I have it open somewhere else. Shame on me. Hang on a minute, you guys. There we go. All right. Let me try that one more time. So I can actually edit the electronic file, and of course it's going to open it up in Word, right? And as I make changes to this, I'll just go ahead and, delete that. Made a change. When I save and bring it back in, Laserfiche is prompting me now. What do you want to do? We notice you made changes with this contract. Do you want to save it as a new version? Do you want to save it as a new document, right? Or discard altogether? Well, I'm going to save it as a new version. So now we can have this version control. Here are my comments. And keep in mind that this is all stored in the audit trail logs. If you have audit trail, all these comments and all these things for expungements and changes, printing, all those other things are stored in audit trail. What I'd like to point out, though, and I'm going to right-click on these column headers. We talked about the details earlier. And I can turn on the versioning, right? Or display the version. Right here I want to see the latest version. So it tells me here that there's 2 versions, right? And basically what's going on is they're stacked on top of each other. If I, didn't want to do that. If I open the metadata for this Word document, you'll notice that I have a tab up here that says that it has 2 versions. So here's version 1, and here's version 2. I can open up the very first version too, and it'll keep everything that we have, and then the comments with all of our changes in the column to the right. Okay, so yet another great collaboration tool, right? We're going to be talking about this collaboration ability in one of the upcoming events too, a little bit more advanced, but we're going to talk about collaboration, signatures, and linking documents and all that, and tagging documents in future presentations. But for right now, we're going to stick to the basics. So the other thing that I want to point out is that we can also layer this Word document in with Laserfiche pages. So I want to generate pages for this, just like as if I snapshotted it with this first one that's got the ~1. It generated those rastered pages for me. And what's nice about those is, like I said, it's going to load quicker than a Word document will. It's going to load quicker than a PDF will, because that's the way Laserfiche designed it. And you'll find that, when we get to some of our future webinars and we start talking about the thin client or web access, there's certain features in it that allow us to load documents even quicker, and also to stream audio and video files. That's built into the client automatically. So Laserfiche really goes all out with the architecture of Laserfiche to ensure it loads as quickly as possible, to ensure that the images come up as fast as they can. I know that, and I've recently got some emails about, some people having problems with their public portals. After looking at it, I've come to the conclusion that a lot of it is network related and not necessarily Laserfiche related. And those are some of the things we're going to talk about in future webinars as well. I'd like to point out, though, after generating these pages, that now there's 3 versions. There's 2 Word documents, and there's 1 Laserfiche. So now if I right-click on this document and say Open Pages, I just generated these from right-clicking on it. So now here's our contract, and this is the changed one, as you can see, because it still has the deletion from the top, okay? So check in, check out is something, like I said, that you can do too. So if, say, for example, this is an agenda and it's Friday and you don't want anybody else messing with it, you can check it out. And the only people that can check it back in are you are an administrator. But it keeps everybody else from messing up something that you have perfected and you are done with and you are ready to go home and leave for the weekend. So keep in mind that that check-in and check-out is pretty awesome. Now, I'm going to show you the last thing in the browser view before we move on to the document view. And this one is the quick search. Now, up in the quick search, I'm going to do a search for text, and I'm going to do a search for the word paperless. Okay? Now, I know this might seem silly to some of you, but this is very pertinent. We have 2 windows that showed up. Okay? Now, this quick search that I chose in the top right, and I hope that you all can see this, it's very hard to see, there's a magnifying glass with a little down arrow. And it allows me to select within the current folder or to search just on text, to search the entry names, to search fields, or to search annotations. Okay? Right now I'm just searching text, because by searching text, it gives me the top window of the documents that it found. And then you'll notice in the bottom left corner, if you can see down here, that with my search for the word paperless, I found 86 entries and 236 hits for the word paperless. And the very first document shows me that it found 10 hits for the word paperless on page 1, 2, 3, page 4. And of course, as you go through these different hits, you notice that the context changes. This is telling me where it found it inside of the document that is selected on the top. Even the PDFs, you guys, because we were able to extract the text from those and make them searchable. What's nice about this is that when I get the hit that I'm looking for, a little bit about what it is, acceptance of employment offer, how that's the one I'm looking for. When I double click on that, not only does it open the document, but it takes me straight to page 4, and then it highlights what I was looking for on the page. Okay? Now, this is the document view. And we're going to sit here for just a couple of minutes. Okay? And the longest portion of my presentation is the browser view, by the way. The document view is the second longest, and then lastly, summing up the bottom end with the search, we'll get to that. But one of the few key things that I want to point out with the document view right now is the different windows within inside it. I'd like you to go with me to View and then Panes. Let's talk about those quick keys again. Oh, come back here. You'll notice that it's got Control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And that controls these buttons here. 1 is for the image window, right? So Control 1, on and off. Control 2 turns the text. Control 3 is the metadata. Control 4 is the thumbnails, and so on and so forth. Control 5 is the annotations. There's none in this, and so on. So those keys allow us to turn off and on these windows. And as I said earlier, you can see that they're pressed. They got the blue thing around them. You can see it's like a button that's pushed in. Let's talk about reordering these. So say, for example, I've got text and, I've got electronic files turned on, right? I'm going to go ahead and close that. And let me go to one of these reports here real quick and open it. So how many of you guys been through this where it's a PDF and it's not opening the image window, but it's opening the PDF inside of Laserfiche. And then we go to the image window. You'll notice here that now we can view the image and the PDF. Have you guys ever thought about this? I'm going to grab this PDF file, and I'm going to drag it. Can you guys see these buttons that have popped up? I got left, top, bottom, right, and I got these ones in the middle, right? This allows me to put the window that I have selected right now wherever I want to. I'm going to put it right on this circle in the middle, right? And guess what happens? It actually tabs this out now. So now I can tab my image and tab my PDF in the same window. Let me turn my thumbnails back on, right? And with any one of these windows, I like my thumbnails down here. So I'm going to drag it to this arrow, if you can see it down on the bottom. I'm going to drop it right there. Now my thumbnails are down at the bottom, right? And let me grab, you see where I go to a double line there? It allows me to grab it and resize the window, okay? So things could get kind of crazy. And, I've got this, that, and the other thing turned on, and oh my gosh, now it's a whole huge mess, okay? Don't worry. You can go to View, Panes, right? Let me try that again. My mouse is a little speedy today, and I can restore the default layout. And it takes me back to the default layout for Laserfiche. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the other things with the buttons and options for this. One of the things that I think is important, let me get a different document up here. I think we'll go back to this first one. We talked about that text that was down in the bottom right. Here's a neat little tip and trick for you. Rubber banding. So we have these buttons up here to zoom in and zoom out. I never use them, you guys, any of them. I think they're just hokey, okay? I don't like them, don't want to use them ever. So when I want to zoom in, I do this thing called rubber banding, right? And it's called rubber banding because you can see me stretching. So when I rubber band something and let go, right, it zooms into that for me. And if I double click on the image, it takes me back out to the full view, okay? So that's called rubber banding. Now, this document has text. So here's another thing that we can do. Say, for example, under no circumstances does the company want wrongfully da-da-da-da-da. I want this paragraph. I'm going to rubber band it. I'm going to hit Control-C for copy. I can do the right mouse, too, if I want to do copy, but I'm going to I like the quick keys better. And I can take this over to, like, say, Word or Notepad, and I'm just going to paste that right in there. So now I'm able to take this text straight from the document by rubber banding a certain portion of it, hitting Control-C to copy it, and then pasting it somewhere else so I don't have to retype it, okay? So rubber banding and double-clicking have a couple of different things that we can do, okay? Kind of a neat little feature. All right. Now, I want to add two buttons that I think are really important. They're not by default with the Laserfiche client, but you all should put them in. And that's called the previous and next document. So I'm going to right-click up where the buttons are, you guys. Right-click, and I'm going to say Customize, okay? And I'm going to go to Commands, and I'm going to scroll down to Next Document or Previous Document. Let's see here. There's Previous Document, and I'm just going to drag it up to the top, right? Next document is right there. I'm going to drag it up. Now, watch this. I'm going to right-click on that, and I'm going to say Begin a New Group. It puts that little line there so it groups these two together. Now, these documents, these are very important buttons, and let me show you why. So if we go to our top list here where we got contracts and agreements open, right? I'm going to open that particular document, and I'm going to hit this button. It allows me to go from document to document without having to close and open this document, right? So let me minimize this just a little bit, and let me minimize this so you can see them side by side. So as I go through, and it's kind of hard to see over here because it's grayed out, but you'll notice that it's going through each one of these documents. on the list that I have available to me, okay? So these next and previous work off of search results or work off of, your quality assurance folder, so that while you're in there, you can easily go through your documents one by one and add the metadata and add the things that need to be added to them for filing, okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about thumbnails, and this is really important, you guys, and I think that this is something that you're all going to appreciate. Let me get rid of that. Okay. Let's go into this batch combine. Now, we combined all those documents into one big 154-page document, and I'm going to go ahead and open it and maximize it. Now, with the thumbnails, I want to show you this. So pages 1, 2, and 3, this is an 11-page document. So right up to here, I'm going to select page 1, and I'm going to hold my Shift key down and select page 11. And then check this out. I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to say New Document. Create new document from batch? Yes. Right? So this is document 1. Okay? There it goes. Now this one, I'm going to do pages 1, 2, 3. Oh, this is an 11-pager again. I'm going to build a new document. And we'll call this Doc 2. Okay? Now keep in mind that if I have metadata over here, it's going to build those documents with the metadata that I have as well. So if you want to do that first and then build out your batch, that's great. I can even go into the middle of it and say, you know what, I want pages 1, 2, 3, holding my control key down, scroll down farther, I want 10, 11, 2, 4, whatever, right? And I can pick and choose through all these pages and then say new document from here, and we'll call this document 3. Okay? So this is building from a batch file using the thumbnails. Now, keep in mind, too, that, from the thumbnails, and I should have pointed this out already, it'd say I want page 1 to be page 7. I can take and move it just by simply dragging it down here, right? So now page 1 is page 7, and so on. I can do multiple selections. I want pages 3, 5, and 7 to be filed after page 25, and just drag them down there, right? So using a thumbnail view as a batch processor is very efficient, very easy to do if you don't have the technology, that you need to process it. But I want to show you one last thing. We talked about this, and I got to keep my power users happy. I'm going to go into this inbound folder, and I've got some samples here. So here is the same documents, but a little bit different. With these ones, when I walked up to the copier machine, I separated each one of them with a slip sheet, right? So there's a slip sheet between pages 1 through 8, and then it starts a new document every time I hit the slip sheet. I'm not going to do that manually. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select that document, and I'm going to click on this batch processing business process that we have, that we created in workflow. And what this does is it goes through that batch, right? And it separates it automatically. Now, which one do you think is going to be faster? Building it from the thumbnail view or putting slip sheets in and letting workflow do it? So you'll notice that number 8 is gone. If we go over here to batch processing, let's see, today is the 14th. Oh my gosh, I've only got 11 minutes. It's 10:49. Here's the batch that it just processed, and it broke all of those documents out. And also, you'll notice that it removed the slip sheets. Okay, so we're doing that with workflow. It can also be done with quick fields if you guys have quick fields. All right. Now, I'm going to move this right along here, and we're going to get to the last view, which is the search view. Okay. Now, I'm going to try to point some things out as quickly as I can because I know I'm getting pressed for time. So the search view, I'm going to go to by clicking on the magnifying glass, and keep in mind, we've got the quick view over here, which is kind of like a Google search. It's a global thing. It looks for, variations. It looks for fuzzy search. It does all those things. I want to show this to you in search in the manual process. We're going to turn on text. Text. There it is. All right. So let's do a search for the word Gonzalez, right? that it brought back verbatim 3 documents. I'm not finding my document that I was looking for. Well, I don't remember if it was Gonzalez with a Z or Gonzalez with an S, but I'm going to turn on the fuzzy search, and I'm going to do the same thing. We got 3 hits before with 3 entries with 4 hits. Now we got 4 entries with 6 hits. So it did find extra with the fuzzy search turned on. So you notice here we've got Gonzalez with a Z, but over here it found Gonzalez with an S, just by checking the fuzzy search. Well, what is fuzzy search? Fuzzy search is finding a variation of the word. So with this, I've got it set up to use the fuzzy search and find 25% of the word that I'm looking for, at least. And we can change this percentage. Or you can do it by letter. In my case, if I was looking for Gonzalez with a Z or an S, I could have just done numbers of letters, which would have been 1. Okay? Now, let's take this a step further. Let's say, for example, let me find somebody's first name in there, Joel and Jeff, all right? So find Gonzalez and Jeff, right? No fuzzy search. Found 1 document. But it found Gonzalez and Jeff, but not necessarily, Jeff Gonzalez. It did here, I realized that. But say, for example, I was looking for Joel, right? Or I was looking for Gonzalez, but not Jeff, right? So let's do that one. And you'll notice it gives me 2 documents now. So look for this and that. Look for this or that. Look for this, but not that. It's called a Boolean search. Boolean. It's the conjunction junction song. Its function is to find verbatim this and that. Okay. Now, if I turn the fuzzy search on, maybe we'll get different results because now we've got Z versus S. We didn't because I don't have enough in my repository, but you get the gist of it. Now, here's the last thing: within. So find Gonzalez, and I got Gonzalez all over the place, but find, within, 1 word, Joel. And it probably won't find it because I think it was Joel A, right? So if we say within 2 words, find it. See, now it came up. So you can really find the needle in the haystack if you know what you're doing. Fuzzy search helps too. It's what we call a global, right? And let's talk about globals for a second. I'm going to turn on the name search, right? And with the name search, let's do a search for the word paperless, right? Oh, how about I have just 1 P at the beginning? And let's do a search. Now, I'd like you to notice that it didn't find anything. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to use a thing called a global, right? An asterisk. It's the Shift 8, right? So let me put that before the word paperless, right? And now hit search. Now, it found 1 document. Go paperless, right? I know there's more than that. So I'm going to put another asterisk at the end of it. So now it's saying, find anything that has the word paperless in the middle of it, right? Let's do that. There we go. So now, by using those globals, you'll notice that it was able to find all of these documents, and they all have the word paperless in the middle. Okay? So the asterisk is global. Fill it out infinity, right? We don't care how many characters. But the other global that we have, you guys, is a question mark. So let's do this. If I put in the asterisk at the beginning, you'll notice that it brought me the go paperless back, right? But I could also, and I'm going to do just 2, I'm going to put 2 question marks there, right? And nothing should come back. But if I do 3 question marks for the go and the space, now it gives me that back. So the question mark is a single character global identifier. And this is normally used for date searches and things like that. Because sometimes people put the date in with a slash, sometimes they put it in with a dash. Or sometimes with, the text, it didn't get either one of them. It put it in as a 1 instead of a slash. So we use the question mark to identify those types of global identifiers. Okay? Let's go ahead and talk about date ranges because we like doing date range search. So with this, I'm going to turn on tags. And I know we didn't talk about tags. We are going to talk about them in great detail in our second 101 webinar. But for this one, I want to use, no, not that date. I want to use fields, we'll say. And I want to see all the documents that need to be reviewed. And let me do this right now. So, you know what? Let me make it even quicker because I believe I saved this search and it should load it for me. So, you guys notice up at the top here, it's got save and it's got load. Well, I saved my recurring search that I do all the time, and this is for documents because my day involves me reviewing all the documents for the day that need to be reviewed for that day. So I'll put in and I'll save that search, right? And what this does is it gives me a list back of all the documents that need to be reviewed today. And again, while I open this, you know, I've got my navigation buttons here where I can go from document to document. Here's one for you. See that one says Alt down arrow? So that I can go Alt down arrow without touching my mouse and go from document to document, right? If I hit my tab key, it takes me straight over to the metadata, and I can actually use my arrow keys to manipulate the metadata, right, without touching my mouse. So I want to reiterate that those are some of the things that you should start using, you know, to automate, to not automate, but to streamline, to optimize your day, to help you get through the job quicker. Now, I am out of time, and I want to show you one last thing before we get out. I want to come full circle. I want to point out down at the bottom here, I have this thing in my loaded search called search syntax, right? So all of these criteria that I have on the top were added as syntax in my advanced search syntax. Now, watch. I'm going to minimize all of these. They won't be part of my search anymore. As a matter of fact, just to prove it to you, I'm going to close them, except for the search syntax. Now, if I include this search syntax, it's going to give me the same list of documents back, right? There they are. Now, what's nice about this is that now I can use this search syntax in a workflow, right? So every day when I come in, you know, it can go out and query, you know, the stuff that needs to be reviewed or the stuff that needs to be destroyed or whatever the case might be. And my last point today that I'm going to make is that, yes, we can take this same syntax, and you guys remember at the top of our presentation, we had the shortcut that allowed us to open Laserfiche automatically by hitting Control-Alt-L. That's how I started this thing. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and here's my shortcut. So I copied that syntax from the search window, and I'm going to paste it right in here. Hopefully I got it right, and I'm going to apply that. So now, when I hit my Control-Alt-L, like I did at the beginning, instead of going to my quality assurance folder, it's going to open up Laserfiche, if I got it right, and it's going to do that search that I just did. Oh, because it logged me in as Greg Heim. So I don't have the same rights as the admin did, but I do have the same search going through. But this shows me, as far as Greg Heim, what his job is today. And I just hit Control-Alt-L. After I change these and my workflow fills up my inbox again, every day when I come in, when I hit Control-Alt-L, it takes me straight to the folder in Laserfiche that I want to be in, that I start my day in. And I know it sounds silly, but the more of these little tips and tricks that you can put in to your business process, the more you're going to like Laserfiche, the more you're going to love Laserfiche, and the quicker you're going to get your job done. You know, the quicker you're going to be able to process documents, information for distribution and for collaboration. That's all I have for today. I'm really surprised that I got it in within the allotted time. I think we just turned to 12 o'clock. And I'm sure that there's some questions and stuff that's out there. So I want to turn it back over to Kimberly so that we can close this thing out. And thank you so much for your time and attention, everyone.
Hi, Greg. Yeah, we do have some questions. Someone is asking how you change the color of the folders.
You know, I knew that was going to come up, and so this is actually done at the beginning of this. Remember when I told you that the documents were displayed by the template that they were in, so that each template was a different color. And you'll notice, I'm going to open up the admin console here, that under metadata management for templates, you notice that the templates themselves are all the different colors. So in City Records, the blue one that I showed, you'll notice in the top right corner that I'm able to set the color for it. So anything I assign this template to will adopt the color in the front end, even folders. So you'll notice that when we come in here to City Records, if I go to the metadata for that, you notice that it's set for City Records. And if I go to Public Records and hit the metadata for it, you'll notice that it's set for Public Records, because Public Records is configured to be red. You'll also notice that I'm red, white, and blue. Very patriotic. Thank you very much. Next question.
This is a question regarding batch processing. How did workflow know to look for the slip sheet?
Well, I told it to. So we talked about the accuracy versus the balance when we OCR'd things. So when I use the text for workflows, I go with accuracy all the way. And inside of my document on the slip sheet, I just put a unique identifier on it, so that when it comes to that slip sheet and finds that unique identifier, it automatically starts a new document. And I wrote that into my workflow. If I go to the batch processing in inbound, and let's see here, samples, there we go, number 7, you'll notice that on my slip sheet, down at the bottom, I just put in, this is my unique identifier, CPS 47347-SSF, right? Is that ever going to come up in somebody's document? Probably not. And in my text file, right, it's down on the bottom, right here. So my workflow grabs this text file, finds this unique identifier, and is able to use it to split the documents up. Very simple workflows. Anybody should be able to do this that, writes workflows. So, if you don't have something like this, get with your reseller. They're certified. They know how to use workflow. And, I just gave everybody a freebie. And it's a really unique, really nice way, to be able to do batch processing. Like, walk up to the copier machine and just put these slip sheets in and click on a business process, because that's all I made. It was a batch processing business process.
Okay, we have
Next
a
question.
user that is sometimes having difficulty finding documents after she puts them in Laserfiche. So I've asked some follow-up questions, but essentially she puts a document in Laserfiche and she's unable to find it. What are some of the most common reasons why that happens? I mean, I suggested, did you assign the right template? And those types of things. Do you have any commentary regarding that?
Yeah, well, 9 times out of 10, it's because that document hasn't been OCR'd and indexed. So let me show you a little trick here. So
yeah, that's
there's
a question I asked
under,
also.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll cover them both. So we have this option in here called Pages, and I skipped over it because I ran out of time. But I'm glad we came back to it, because I can use this Pages option to go through my entire repository and look for documents that contain OCRing our text on no pages. I could also make this a Boolean search and combine that within a specific folder, right? So only search in quality assurance area and search for documents that have not been OCR'd and indexed. Well, they've all been OCR'd and indexed. Let me do it globally. So this will go through my entire repository and show me every document that has not been OCR'd. So if we do a full text search on this, we're not going to get any hits back from any of these documents because they haven't been OCR'd and indexed. Now, we can do a manual search for this and find all the documents that haven't been. And again, I'm going to do another quick key here, you guys. I'm going to select one document, and I'm going to hit Control-A for all. And it selected everything. It selected all 1,726 documents, if you can see that in the bottom left here, right? And now I would just click on the OCR button, and I would OCR them all. And after they're done, I would go ahead and try my search again and see if those hits don't come up. This might take a little bit of time, so depending on how many you're doing, you might set it up before you go home at night and just lock your machine and let it run. Or you might do it at lunchtime, right before you go to lunch. Do a search for some documents, select a chunk of them, and set them to OCR and index. The last thing that you can do is get with your reseller, because we do have a server-side OCRing that's built into your Laserfiche workflow, and your Laserfiche reseller should be able to set you up for that. I got to do a disclaimer for that, though. You have to have a separate machine, and it's our recommendation to have separate machines to do the server-side indexing, not your primary Laserfiche server. Because sometimes with OCRing, things can go awry, and we want to make sure that your server doesn't get taxed because of it. We'd much rather have a client station that's not being used be part of an OCRing pool that keeps your OCRing up to date and unattended. So if you have questions about that, get with your value-added reseller for Laserfiche. Okay?
Okay, I think that's it. So I'm going to call it. Thank you, Greg, and thank you to our audience. We appreciate you all being here. And just one more reminder, we've recorded the webinar and we'll be posting it on our website, cps247.com, by end of day on Monday, so please look out for it. And we'll be conducting more webinars, so please look out for those. Thanks for making time to join us today, and we will see you on our next webinar.